you kind of miss the peace and quiet. You miss being able to just come and play. I'm sure you guys will hear a lot of boos and a lot of cheers today. It's just part of it. But that's what sports is.
Pull up from anywhere.
Here's Cunningham. Hearing the boos as she touches it, gets fouled by...
I want to shout out the Tempo crowd in the city. I think we've had so much fun. It's my first time being in Canada. It's a lot of our first times being in Canada. But the crowd was absolutely amazing. And, I think that's what sports is all about. You're going to get boos, you're going to get cheers. But just the fact that they're so passionate, they're loud, and they're putting on for the city, I think it's amazing. So shout out to you guys.
Sophie Cunningham walked into the loudest road environment of her career, and instead of running from it, she smiled right back at it. That's the sound that greeted her the second time. An even louder round of boos rolling down from every level of Scotiabank Arena the moment her name hit the loudspeaker. Most players would tense up hearing that. Most players would shrink a little, maybe glance at the bench, maybe ask a teammate what's going on out there.
Out here getting booed by the woke Toronto Tempo fans. Oh, wah. Sophie burned them to the ground with some clutch three-pointers. So she got booed right there. We also got Sophie getting booed at the free throw line.
99 a month. Cunningham misses the second.
I mean, seriously. You got fans booing Sophie Cunningham because she supports women in sports at a women's basketball game. That's one of the more absurd things, but it's Canada. I mean...
Sophie didn't do any of that. She jogged straight to the scorer's table like it was any other Tuesday night, peeled off her warm-ups, and got ready to play the game she came there to play. No hesitation, no dramatic pause, no searching the crowd for whoever started it. Just business as usual, in a building that had clearly decided she wasn't welcome.
Sophie Cunningham getting booed as she checks in to the game. Now, honestly, from this video, it doesn't sound too much like boos. Well, you can hear the person holding the phone boo, but it sounds a little bit 50-50. However, during the actual gameplay, you really hear it rain down.
Pull up from anywhere.
Here's Cunningham. Hearing the boos as she touches it.
And that's when you really start hearing the boos. And then she goes to the free throw line.
First pass. Scan the QR code and subscribe today for just $14.99 a month. Cunningham misses the second.
But the good thing about Sophie Cunningham, she doesn't give a damn about your boos. Because you know what she's going to do? She's going to come out and she's going to shove it right up. She's going to stick it where the sun don't.
It's worth remembering, this wasn't some small regional crowd either. Scotiabank Arena was packed for the Tempo's biggest game of the season, a nationally watched matchup against Caitlin Clark and the Fever. And a huge chunk of that sold-out building spent the night aiming its energy directly at one specific player coming off the bench. That's a lot of noise to absorb for anybody, let alone someone playing in Canada for the very first time in her career.
A bit tonight.
Really?
Yeah.
I was kidding.
Especially for the toughest.
Good.
I think it was because of the ketchup chips.
You know what? Yeah, I like where your mind's at on that. Maybe I should try. I heard I was supposed to try a different brand. So, but you know what? I will tell you. I want to shout out the Tempo crowd in the city. I think we've had so much fun. It's my first time being in Canada. It's a lot of our first times being in Canada. But the crowd was absolutely amazing. And, I think that's what sports is all about. You're going to get boos, you're going to get cheers. But just the fact that they're so passionate, they're loud, and they're putting on for the city, I think it's amazing. So shout out to you guys for coming out and supporting.
By the way, whoever told you about maple cookies, I've lived here my whole life. I've never heard of them.
Dude, not great. You don't need to just...
This is where it gets interesting because after the game, a reporter asked her point blank if she heard the reaction from the crowd all night. Really? She said, almost laughing at the question before joking that maybe it was because she and her teammates had tried ketchup chips for the first time and clearly didn't rate them high enough for Canadian taste. It was a light, easy answer, the kind of thing that tells you she wasn't sitting there stewing about it in the locker room afterward. She wasn't building a grievance list. She was cracking jokes about potato chips less than an hour after getting booed almost every time she touched the ball. That's the first thing worth sitting with here. A player who's been at the center of one of moments usually go. Most post-game press conferences after a night like that turn into some version of damage control. Either the player downplaying how much it bothered them, or a team spokesperson quietly steering questions away from the topic entirely. Sophie didn't need any of that. She just answered honestly and moved on. The same way she's handled almost every version of this question all season long.
Honestly, last year I think it did. Now I'm a little bit used to it. You kind of miss the peace and quiet. You miss being able to just come and play. I'm sure you guys will hear a lot of boos and a lot of cheers today. It's just part of it. But that's what sports is. I take it. I'm very blessed to be in the position I'm in. I think that's what sports is. The rivalries, the competitiveness. A lot of people shy away from that. I think that's what it's all about. Like that's the fun. That's when you're out here competing and you're hearing all that. That's what you're going to remember. And so my life maybe has changed a little bit. Can't really go anywhere without anyone really. I don't want to say bothering because I think that a lot of people are so friendly and they want to meet you. But you just have to keep your head on a swivel too, depending on where you're at. And I'm blessed to be on the platform in the position I'm in.
And then she said the part that actually matters. I will tell you, I want to shout out the Tempo crowd in the city. I think we've had so much fun. It's my first time being in Canada. It's a lot of our first times being in Canada. The crowd was absolutely amazing, and I think that's what sports is all about. You're going to get boos. You're going to get cheers. Read that again slowly because it's not a throwaway line. She wasn't asked to say something nice. Nobody forced her hand. She looked at a building full of people who spent an entire night jeering her, and she chose to compliment them instead of complain about them. Think about how rare that actually is in professional sports right now, where the instinct for almost everyone, fans and players alike, is to frame a hostile crowd as a problem that needs fixing. Sophie flipped that completely. She treated the noise as proof that people cared enough to show up loud, which if you strip away the politics of why they were booing her in the first place, is honestly just a compliment to how big the moment felt. She's basically saying the quiet part out loud that a lot of athletes believe privately, but rarely admit on camera. A dead building is worse than a loud one, even when the loud one is loud because of you.
Caitlin Clark fighting her in the corner. Sophie Cunningham for three. Bang. Here she is, creating her own shot. Maya Chantal set a nice screen. Sophie Cunningham 3 feet behind the line. Bang. Sophie Cunningham on the run with Ty Harris. Trail on the play. Catch, wide open three. Bang. Sophie Cunningham. Hey, you want to boo Sophie? She's not one of these players that folds under pressure. Hashtag I said what I said. She's not going to fold under pressure. She's going to stick her chest out and go like this after she hits a three on your home court. Shout out.
She didn't just talk her way through it either. She backed it up on the court. 13 points, 3 of 4 shooting from the field, and a perfect 3 for 3 from beyond the arc. Most of it coming right in front of the same fans who'd been on her all night. Every time the ball drops through the net, the boos got a little quieter and the murmurs got a little louder because that's what happens when a player refuses to let the noise change how she plays. She wasn't rattled into forcing bad shots or playing tight. If anything, she looked looser than usual, like Fever roster that includes Caitlin Clark. But she's built her entire reputation on being the player who thrives in chaos. The one who dives for loose balls and tops trash right back when trash gets talked at her. A hostile road crowd isn't a threat to a player built that way. It's fuel. Coaches around the league have said for years that you want players who feed off exactly this kind of environment because most players can't. Most players need the crowd to like them to play their best. Sophie has quietly built a career on being one of the few who plays better when they don't. This wasn't even the first hostile building she'd walked into this season. Weeks earlier in another road city, fans lined the streets outside the arena holding signs of their own. Some in support of her stance, plenty against it, and the boos inside that night were just as loud as the ones in Toronto. Cunningham's response back then was almost identical to this one. She played through it. She scored through it. And afterwards, she talked about the atmosphere instead of the controversy. There's a pattern here, and it's not an accident. She's decided city after city that the reaction from the stands isn't something that needs to change her approach to the game or her mood afterward. Screaming, Why do fans keep booing her in the first place? That part depends entirely on who you ask. Some of it traces back to comments she made earlier this year about biological differences in women's sports. Comments that turned her into one of the most talked about and for some most polarizing figures in the league almost overnight. Some fans are booing because they disagree with what she said. Some are just booing because she's an easy target now, a name that gets a reaction. The kind of player visiting crowds love to single out regardless of the actual reason. Honestly, at a certain point, the specific why stops mattering as much as how she's handled the after. And how she's handled it has been remarkably consistent, night after night, arena after arena, regardless of which city or which reason is driving the noise that particular week.